Hey everyone, very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Samik, Event and Program Manager for Microsoft Reactor India. And yes, we again welcome you all to yet another session of MVP Connect. Today's session has been interesting that monitor your Azure OpenAI instances by Samik Roy. So before we start our today's event, let's go through our code of conduct. We are all here to participate together, learn together. So please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, be kind and considerate in a way we all engage. Yes, we do encourage you all to participate. Please do drop all your questions in the chat section and we'll pick it from there. Let's not wait. Like to bring in our host, Samik. Hey, hi Samik, how are you?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you, Parth, and thank you for the opportunity. So
Yep. So Samik, where are you from?
I'm based out of Bangalore. Yeah, and
Oh,
it's
that's
evening.
great. Evening, Bangalore evenings are like filter coffee.
Yeah,
Namma filter coffee.
correct.
Yep. So, folks, yeah, the floor is all yours, Samik.
Thank you, Parth. So with that said, yeah, thank you for bringing the screen in as well. I hope you are having a great day today, and based on wherever you are joining, a great good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, and thank you for taking out your time to join the session. Hope you learn better today on Azure OpenAI monitoring. And also, I'm thankful to Reactor for giving me this opportunity. With that said, I'll get started with the session today. Monitor your Azure OpenAI instances, right? And to jumpstart on that, right? First, a little bit about who am I, and I'll try to make it really quick. So, I recently became a Microsoft MVP on security space. I'm an author of a book called KQL for Microsoft Sentinel, and I'm also a cloud security architect. You can reach out to me for any questions around the sessions and later point in time, right? So, with that, let's look at the agenda for today. And I'm going to keep it really, really simple for us because OpenAI itself is new. So, just wanted to make sure that we all are taking it slowly, but firmly and understand it at a deeper level. So the agenda is going to be why we even need a monitoring, and the next thing would be we'd look at how we gonna do the monitoring, and in that section we're gonna look at the ways we can enable monitoring and what are the available offerings, and that will follow by a demo as well. And towards the end of the session, right, uh, we are going to have a Q&A session, and again, that doesn't mean that it has to be at the end. Feel free to have, I love to have your questions maybe later point in time and things like that, right? So with that said, let me move on to the next slide. So the first one is the big why, right? And it is a very, very basic thing, and this is not individual or specific to Azure OpenAI. We are talking about Azure OpenAI today. That's the reason I picked up these top 5 points. But the first thing, as I see, when we monitor as of today, right, let's say we have our Azure OpenAI instance, and the first thing we're going to understand the availability of the service and the performance, like based on the users using it, because we often going to use Azure OpenAI as a backend service. That means we're going to use Azure OpenAI and models within it with deployments and things like that. And then we either use it directly during our development and testing phase, or maybe when we launch it the production environment, what we will do is OpenAI instance will be acting as a engine for our application we are going to develop, right? So that's where we might not have any interaction directly with Azure OpenAI, and that's the reason it is really, really important that we always keep a measure or keep the visibility around the availability and the performance of the instance, right? And today we also talk about, in case you have one OpenAI account which is right, if you have multiple, how do you deal with it? And is there a common console we can apply the monitoring on, and things like that. And the next pillar here is operational insights. In that case, for example, whenever we start doing your OpenAI implementation, either we're developing or we are testing or we are putting into production, in either cases, after we put it into production, we need to keep on a continuous eye to understand what are the operational insights we are going to get out of it. And this is one area which is a why, and eventually this why is also going to help us to understand what is the capacity we need at OpenAI, and what are the quotas we would go forward and how to measure them. Are we operationally doing fine, or is there a space to optimize it, making things better and things like that? And the next one is really the straightforward one, as it says, troubleshooting, right? So with troubleshooting, what we are going to do is, let's say we are writing an app and then we have been able to deploy it, let's say a Turbo 3.5 model, and then we try to type in a chat and then we suddenly see it doesn't give us a response, it failed, right? Now, having the diagnostic settings or the monitoring turned on, we can always go back to the log and figure out, when that failed. And then imagine the same scenario for a particular production, running application, because when you test, it's very easy. Either as a developer we test it, and if we are finding any error, it's kind of, we know that like this is the timestamp, this is how the error was reproduced, and we go and fix it. But if it happens for a user, right, so how do we kind of track it? So that's the fundamental reason it helps us with troubleshooting, right? Then further to it, once we have the availability, performance, and then we have the operational insights captured, also we have a reliable source for troubleshooting too. Then what you're going to look at is resource utilization, because as we know, OpenAI itself is a resource intuitive resource in Azure. So for example, if there are some prompts, written, and you're using that as an application, and you see that prompts really is taking, good amount of tokens and things like that. So by seeing that, if we are able to measure it, like for example, if we have a prompt failure, or like a prompt, create me a review for XYZ, right? So that go gets you, let's say for example, X amount of tokens. Now, eventually when you look at the resource utilization, and if you feel that, okay, I can rewrite that only by writing review and then the subject topic, right, that eventually is going to cut down the number of tokens you're going to utilize, and eventually that's going to take down your whole cost and utilization of your OpenAI instance, right? And last one, but again, it's never the least, it's diagnostic settings. So obviously, once we have diagnostic settings turned on for any app for that matter, you get certain metrics as what is the usability, what are the kind of interactions happens and things like that. And in this session, I'll definitely go deeper dive at what are the diagnostic settings available, and how basically we can do diagnostic setting troubleshooting and see them at the first place, right? With that said, let me quickly move on to the next is how, right? And in how, what I have done is, again, when you say how, right, it is not like we just click on configure the monitoring. There are different aspects to monitoring. There are different ways we can tune up our monitoring, and always, let's say when you start a monitoring or monitoring a dev instance versus monitoring a production instance, there is a different aspects to it, right? Production has a lot more impact than dev. So in that case, the how is more of a workflow, wherein we follow, or it is recommended to follow that. You start simple, right? Look at what is off the shelf, and then eventually you can go forward with it, right? So let me click on and show you. As I said, it's going to be a path forward. Now, if you look at, obviously, the moment we create a Azure OpenAI instance, I am going to show this piece in the demo, that whenever we create an instance, for my instance, there is one Azure dashboard available with certain predefined metrics. So for anybody who is going to start, and then if we look at, for example, we have an OpenAI instance created, we can straight away go to the Azure dashboard, and that can give us real-time metrics. So no, fundamental thing to understand here is when you talk about Azure dashboard, right? That doesn't give you any sort of detailed troubleshooting or logging data. It is more of a metric data what you see, right? Once you see the metric data, you will have a fair amount of idea that okay, the interaction we are doing with our OpenAI instance, is it really visible, right? We can see that in different aspect, different graphs and things like that. Now, once we enable that and then kind of have that visible in our eyes, and then we go forward, we obviously, as I say, we can view matrices. The next thing, we can enable diagnostics. So like any other Azure resources, OpenAI also supports diagnostics, right? So in that diagnostics, there are obviously few steps to take here, which is again not very complex. And there is a settings, I'm going to demo that as well, wherein how you can enable it just in few clicks. And once you enable it, again, once you enable this, you might need to consider the cost around it and how to use it and how to tune it and things like that. And also what are the different options to kind of use that diagnostics. Like it is not mandated that exactly in one particular place you can see the diagnostics logs. Today in demo, I'm going to show you one way, right? But if you are using, or in your enterprise or in your company, if you're using a particular method to log your diagnostic setting to a particular log source, you can do that too, right? Now, with that said, as I say, anything in Azure, there are multiple ways to do it, right? So you can always use a PowerShell, you can always use Azure Portal, you can always use CLI to kind of enable it. Because end of the day, it is basically enabling a diagnostic settings, nothing more than that. But we're gonna see why that diagnostic settings make sense, and how they're going to kind of help you understand what are the things available and how to make use of it. And again, if you go by the default ways, the good part is, uh, as I say, if you go by the default ways with Microsoft documented ways, you get a lot more resources available to make use of them, so that your diagnostics and monitoring becomes a lot more richer at a faster time, right? You don't need to spend much of time around there. And then once you have the diagnostics enabled, obviously, as I say, the fundamental is Azure dashboard, you enable diagnostics, then we can keep writing our queries, and we are going to use Azure's native language, like Kusto query language. KQL is the language wherein we can start querying. And I'm also going to show you how you can write your very, very fundamental query and have a fair understanding of what that data contains, right? And then once you're confident enough, and then once you start querying and seeing things over there, here and there continuously, what happens is you can start building dashboards. So in the demo today, I tried creating one, and definitely feel free to create on your own. And then what are the metrics as you need to be there, and what are the log sources, or what are the log data you need to be there, you can definitely do that, right? And I'm also going to show you in that demo that how useful it becomes when you can put your diagnostics logs and monitoring logs into visual. Like one visual can tell multiple stories, right? So think with that, and as I mentioned, you initially write KQL query and you go to workbooks over here, right? And that's how you kind of build your monitoring tool. And as I say, today we're talking about monitoring, right? The story doesn't end here. If you really want to go forward, right, you can always go and put some alerting, put some, put an automation to, for certain incidents, create a ticket and ticketing system and things like that. Those things are always a possibility, right? And that makes your total monitoring system more richer, right? For example, you want to say that, just to give like, your average monitoring time or average query millisecond time is like 40 or 30 milliseconds for your each query, right? For your one of the OpenAI account. Now you definitely can write a mechanism wherein you say that, okay, if my query timing or response timing goes beyond 100 milliseconds, that's something we don't want, and we think that's something we want to optimize. So what you could do there is just create an alert and tag a logic app, for example, and then send it to ticketing system or send it over an email and things like that. So those are obviously the possibilities of monitoring and enhancing that OpenAI monitoring. Now, a bit of summarization here. What I'm trying to say here before we jump into the demo. So you have all these monitoring tools, right? Number one reason, as you've seen in the previous slides, to look at things like performance, the resource utilization, and the troubleshooting and the diagnostics and things like that. Now that will give you data and enough evidence, and the purpose of all this entire monitoring mechanism is for you to have your OpenAI instance perform better. You get enough metrics as to decide that do we really need this query or this instance to be running there, or do we need to scale it up, or whatever is the case, right? So monitoring OpenAI gives you the leverage to take more data oriented decisions and run an optimized business, right? That's the whole and sole purpose of your OpenAI instance or OpenAI monitoring, for that matter any monitoring, right? And as I say, we had enough slides, so I definitely love to jump on a demo. So let me quickly try to get the Azure screen up so that I can show you the demo of the portal. And here I bring, I hope you see the Azure portal, right? So I'll go back to our Azure landing page. And as I have, executed or ran or searched for OpenAI a couple of times, you can see that in favorites. But if not, obviously you can search for Azure OpenAI and get a list of all the instances. And you can also see one of the instances are available in my recent, because I have been preparing for this demo or this session for quite some time, right? So let me click on that. And just so that you are aware, right? So the given here is you have a Azure OpenAI instance created, and that's the need here. Without that, you definitely cannot put any monitoring, right? So I would say we will have the overview page in, and once the overview page comes up, right, and you can see I've just given it a name as a co-pilot because I was trying to do some sort of demo around that. So once the instance comes in, right, as you see, I don't even go inside the studio or look at the models, and we don't need to. Obviously there are some models deployed, and I have tested, I have created some chatbots and things like that, so that the environment can be hydrated with some sort of matrices. But within the home page itself, you can always go to the center left section where they call it monitor. And once you click on the monitor, you can right away see that dashboard, as you can see here, right? And as I was talking about, these are the metrics, and right, let's say by default it is another 50 week and 30. Then looking at the matrices, as I was talking about, these are the metrics, right? You can see the model name, and it's once for all, as I say, GPT-3 for Thank you. I think I'll share my screen again, and you should be able to see the screen. So I hope you see my screen now. All right. So coming back to the same point, and sorry for the lag. Coming back to the point here that and you can obviously see metrics data. So again, this is something comes by default. And if I look at the further metrics, the first one was by model name, right? Second thing is by model version. And again, the story is same in my case because I'm only using one predominant model, but I didn't go for like a huge production level multi-model deployment. So it's only a dev instance, you can see. And obviously the deployment request is also the same thing because it's just single deployment. And there's one another thing is we can also see the successful calls, right? And obviously the screen type and the operation type. And if you look at the operation type, right, so there are two things. Because I was able to, though we are running a turbo 3.5, right, then still I was able to create a completions calls, and I was able to create a chat call, right? So that's why you see two different mechanisms here. And if I go to the top, right, and look at the other tabs available, which is called token based. So obviously process prompt by token model name, as you can see here. And active tokens by model, there's nothing much I have utilized in last one day. And you can always go back in time and look at things and metrics. And next one was processed interferenced by tokens by deployment, and any other metrics which is generated completion token and then generated tokens by deployment, right? So these are a few metrics available. And also if you go to the third tab called PTU utilization, and obviously that's what it looks like. Eventually, with that said, fine tuning and all, right? So, and the next one is fine tuning, right? The next one is fine tuning. And obviously if you see fine tuning, processed fine tuning, and fine tuning deployment by model name. So that's what you get by default with uh, you know uh, open instance you create. Now let's say, as I say, this definitely helps you understand the basics of monitoring and what are the things you can do, right? If you want to go beyond that, then what you could do is the next step, as I was talking about, which is an option available in portal. You can do that with any other means, because Azure lets you do things in multiple ways. And for that, I will look at the left navigation, keep coming down, and go to the diagnostic settings. And once I look at the diagnostic settings, created the diagnostic settings over here. And if you have not, you can create one, or in my case, I'm going to edit the existing one. And even when you edit or create, you're going to see what are the log details it's going to log. It's going to help you get the audit logs, request response, trace, and all metrics. So these are the, sorry, these are the options available. You can definitely choose any of them, or you can choose the combination you're looking forward to. And also, once you have the settings created, right, you can always go and alter that, and the logs ingestion will differ right after your settings changes. So what I mean by that is, let me go to the edit settings. So for example, when you are setting it up, right, for the first time, all you want to do in that case is just click on audit and then save it, right? Eventually you feel like, okay, you need all logs, or you need all metrics and things like that. You can keep on changing the settings, and the log ingestion will vary accordingly, right? And that's one of the things available as a part of diagnostic settings. And then what you could do is send that to log analytics, which I have done in my case. But in your case, if you have a partner solution, if you have an event tab you want to stream it to, if you want to go to storage account, yes, you can do that too. And the good part is you can also do multi-stream. So what I mean by multi-stream is, well, you are ingesting in log analytics, which is fine, but you also want to send it to storage account, right? Or you also want to stream it to event hub and things like that. So this is where the flexibility comes in, right? So if you have an enterprise setup, you manage things with event hub, and then all your alerting system goes to event hub and things like that. Or there's a partner solution involved. Or if you have a compliance standard, right, anything you run in Azure has to be there for a year in storage account and things like that. This is the settings which you actually look at and enable and things like that. Now, once you kind of save it, right? As for Microsoft, it takes around 24 hours to a day to get the settings up and then the logs coming in. So in my case, what I have done is, I have set it up like a day earlier, so we have really some logs in by now. Now, one thing to remember, right? The moment I played around the checkboxes, you see the save button got disabled. That means the screen also understood that there are changes happened, but I'm not going to change anything. So we are going to go to back using the breadcrumb, say don't save any changes because I'm happy with the changes I have. And then that's all the settings you need to do. And once you do the settings, what you could do is, we know we have, set our log ingestion to be done in one of our Azure Log Analytics instances. And again, that's also available in my favorites. So I'm going to click on that. And once I click on that, it is going to take me to Azure Monitor, where you can see things over here and all the logs what is getting ingested. And as a next step, what I'm going to do is write a few queries around that, right? So let me try to, go to, logs here. All right, so it has loaded the screen and it is here. And the table name would be as you can see, I ran a few queries since this morning, and it all stored in my history, right? So all I'm going to do is, so let me try to quickly get something more here. And
Hey everyone, so sorry. Looks like Samik has been in some technical glitch and will be joining us back very quickly. So meanwhile, if you all have any questions, please drop in and I'll have Samik back on stage. Yes, I see Samik backstage. Hi Samik, can you hear us?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
I'm good now.
okay.
So
Samik, can you quickly share your screen?
I will share my screen as well. Let me. All right. You should be able to see my screen as well.
Yep. Yeah, please Samik.
All right.
Yeah, Samik,
So
please go ahead.
what happened here is thank you, Parth, sir. So by the time I came back, joined in, right? So the query got executed, and I can run it again, but just to show you that this is what the logs getting created based on the diagnostic settings we created, right? And then if I expand one of the logs, you would see that that has few details like the time of it, the standard logging, the resource ID, the category is audit because we have selected one of our things as audit logs, and it also talks about the resource group. And as I was talking about, right now, because I'm only running one instance, I have put a filter as Microsoft.cognitive services. You can also get other filters, right? Resource type, accounts, or the resource name as something like that, or the resource group itself, right? So that you can get the accurate result of the particular instance you're looking for. Then once we do that, let's look at some other interesting factors here. So if I expand the properties gives you some sort of details of that particular asset identity, where exactly it happened. And it was, as it was audit log, it has captured, it did a list key audit, right? So someone has tried to open the keys and list down the keys. That's what the logs are in. And we can obviously go and look at other logs as well. See, these are list assets, and then it can also capture the IP addresses, and it can also look at the duration as I was talking about. So now if you want to write a query that I want to go ahead and then get something beyond X duration, what you could do is include this. So once you include this, this is something gets added in the query, and then I would just change the parameter here, right? And then if I run the query, this is going to show up anything beyond or anything higher than that particular millisecond value, right? Same thing goes for IP address and other things like that. So I'd also like to show you another thing. So for example, you have written this query, which is all good, right? Then you see, one query never gives you enough monitoring evidence, right? You need to have multiple queries and a particular dashboards to kind of look at the entire monitoring stuff. So for that, I would bring up one dashboard, which is a very basic one, which I created out of the same data. And the way to navigate to it, because I have saved it and it's under monitoring workbooks, and I've created this Azure OpenAI workbook. And let me edit this. And once I edit, as you can see, workbook by nature is a set of building blocks. And then I just kept on writing KQL queries based on whatever I need to see here. And then it's going to list down the query. What means how many Azure OpenAI instance it have, right? That's what distinct means. And it's going to list out one because I have one only in the environment, or at least one logging turned on. Next thing, if I try to edit, right, it's going to list the operation name. As you can see, it is going to show up the list of operation, what it's going to be, and then after that, once you do the summarization, you're going to get the list. And also I've applied a visual called tiles, wherein I'm going to get the list of everything I need to see here, right? Then the next one is really interesting one. You can see some spikes as well, right? So if I quickly go and edit the query, what I have done in this query is I've taken a single data set. It's the same query, the same data sets in different aspects. So the first one is Azure Diagnostics, getting it by result signature. So as you know, result signature gives us the error codes or the HTTP code. So we know 404 is not found, and 200 is success. So I've just put a little case structure here so that we can get text values. And then also what I have done, listed the duration in millisecond as we have seen the query, and then joined both of them and then applied a particular visual. Right now, as a part of that, what happened is, we know seven unknown, so there's no much of those operation doesn't include, maybe that's an audit log or something like that, which doesn't include a result signature. So it might not have a millisecond as well for duration. But for the success and not found, what happens is, it picked up a graph, right? And let me also go to the tile settings. What is been done here, and put results, and then in the results I've also added something like, if it is success, show this icon; if it is not found, right, show error; everything else is unknown, right? And then there is one subtitle option wherein I have done a green spark bars and selected the list of duration in milliseconds. So depending on how many millisecond it has calculated, it's going to show me a bar or spark bars over here, so that this is what the green visual looks like. So just in case if you want to change it, right? So let's say I change it to blue and apply it, it's just there. So that's how you can build your own dashboards and eventually go around things that what's going on, and how you can basically pick it up and things like that. Now, if I cancel it, again, I'm not going to do any changes over here. So let me get to the one. I was just creating another one so that I can demo that. So let's say this is where we started writing, and we want to write more queries over here. So let's say, how do I do all these things? So if I want to do same thing, like I want to do a list of things or whatever is done, or kind of timestamp thing in the list key. So what I could write, let me try another query over here, or maybe I'll go very generic, right? So add one query here, and in the query, because we know the base query is this one, wherein Azure Diagnostic Resource Provider equal to service provider. Let's paste it here, and once I paste it here, go to the next line, we can write something like summarize count by bin. Bin is a function which basically does time blockers, right? So I say 5 minutes, right? Or let's go with like 10 minutes. I'm going to explain the query in a while, but if I run this by default, and also I'm going to select something like timestamp, and timestamp is something which came up as a visual from the top here, right? This last 48 hours. So I wrote a new query and then just ran the query. I mean, it automatically ran the moment I clicked on it, and you can see there is a data set. Now, this data set is obviously, I mean, it's good data point, but it is not visual appealing, right? Now, again, this is the crux of monitoring. When you have the data, you can always tweak it in a different way and then understand things in a lot more better way. So what I'm going to do is, in the visualization, we will go as time chart because we have a time involved. And let's wait, and then, as you can see, this is a graph right now, and that's all I need to do. And once you build it, let me also go to chart settings, right? See if we can do something more around chart settings. And let's say if we go group settings and want to do something, show legend info, show a threshold line. So I want to go a threshold line, and give me a warning threshold, and let me add it somewhere around 8. So as I was talking about, right, we are trying to build some sort of metrics, and then we want to see how many times that instance or interaction to the OpenAI has gone something beyond our expectation. So as you can see here, right, there is a line created information. Nothing of this data gets stored. It's just the visual, the way we render. It's always working on the raw data which is ingested as a part of diagnostic settings from OpenAI diagnostics to Azure Log Analytics or Azure Monitor. So this is just a visual representation. There is no cache behind that. If you want to refresh, you can refresh here, or every time you come to this dashboard, you're going to see a fresh data based on the time you select. So there is no caching, no lagging, no delay. The moment it gets ingested into Azure Monitor, you can see it, right? And you can obviously see it here that there's a trend line over here which tells you like, okay, based on that, it's going to tell me exactly on what time the spike started and then exactly on what time it came down below. So that's a good metric point for us to understand that, okay, this is what is causing problem, or maybe it is getting heavier in terms of usability or any other aspect, right? And let's try to get another one, maybe a simpler one, right? uh, what I would do is say done editing, and what you're gonna do is we're gonna write some sort of, I'd say, we're gonna do some sort of baselining and update and see how what is beyond. So in this case, right, in this case what we did is, okay, we put a solid threshold based on our understanding or our expectation. This is a very hard line, right? So it's always on 8. If you put on 8, it's going to be 8, and if you want to change it somewhere else, right, it's going to go up or down. But let's say if I want to do something else, for example, let's try to write a query. Let's say we can say baseline, right? In baseline, we're going to say this and count of, how do I say this? Let me get the query here. And I think I just tried editing it, and then I'm going to go here and change these settings. And obviously, you will definitely get to know this as and when you start writing and understanding the schema and metrics. So I'd again summarize average of count underscore, because, or whenever you're writing a query, for example, you just get like maybe overwhelmed, or maybe this is a little slow. So what you could do is go back to this previous screen and then try to add a new one, and start writing our query here. So it's a lot more intuitive, easier, and better to understand. So I'd say this is my baseline, and again, Azure Diagnostics settings average. Let me get the same count by this and paste there. And I'm going to extend, you know, deviation equal to, or maybe what I would do is add something to scalar. Let me see, what did I do wrong there? Okay, to scalar baseline as a deviation, um, count underscore minus baseline by, maybe I'm writing a little bit of different formula here, but let's try to delete everything else. All right. And that's how basically we're gonna see something of this, and we can see the deviation, right? So let's copy the whole query, as I say, and then I will go back and then try to open my graph here, paste here, and let me just type in, or maybe first, let it run. It comes over, and in the visualization, I would say bar chart. Maybe the bar chart is not selected right. You can see it basically gives you a positive and deviation and count. So I don't want to have the count, because count is of no use. I only need the deviation. So we're gonna only project away the count. As you can see, this is the baseline and these are the kind of thing. So that's the kind of thing you can also do while you are writing logs, or want to monitor. Now let's say, I mean, we can definitely go deeper and deeper based on the data sets and data formats we have available. And once we are done, I'm gonna hit save on top here. Once we save it, now imagine that this is something you have developed for one of your OpenAI instances, and you want to kind of reuse it, right? So all it's need to be is what I would do is I've saved it, and then I can click on done editing. So for example, this looks at least good for you, maybe. For example, then we're gonna edit this. And how do we deploy in multiple environments? We're going to go to advanced edit, and the moment you get advanced edit, you can either use a gallery template or arm template depending on whatever you want to. But just download it, right? So once it's downloaded, it goes to my downloads, right? Then what I'm going to do is, so I go to workbooks, right? And once I go to the workbooks, or maybe let's go back to the Azure portal, go to the instance, and section. So I'll scroll a little bit down, and so I have my workbook downloaded. And when I create a new one, I'll go to same advanced edit here. And then once it comes in, I'll just wait for it to populate, right? I'm also trying to open the Azure AI workbook here. So as you can see, this came in as a JSON workbook, and I'm going to just bring up the one I downloaded. I've opened that in a notepad format. So all I'm going to do is copy the entire thing. Obviously you can go for an arm deployment too if you want to, but the simplest thing is be just paste it and apply it, and you'd see it just copied the entire thing. So that's how even you distribute your workbooks to, for your visual or monitoring representation. So this is one thing which is a part of demo, right? But beyond this, you can also set something as alerts in the monitoring, or in Azure Monitor itself, wherein if I click on alerts, it's gonna, which is the place you want to set up the alerts, right? So give me one sec, I'll let it load first. In the meantime, let me see if I can go back to the instance. I'll quickly go to the instance, and let's see if the alert opens. So by the time it comes in anyway, so it's going to show up. And then yeah, as you can see, the back one came in. You can always, you can create an alert rule, for example, and write a query what I wrote, like if your duration millisecond goes like more than 500 milliseconds, send an email, or write a logic app again to send an email or do some stuffs and things like that. And that's how it is. So with that said, I would say that's all I had for the demo. And as a next, I'm just going to show you a few details. Like this is what you get as a part of your out of the box metrics, right? And you can see, like, as I've already demonstrated, as a part of it, right? And the next thing is we have really wonderful and easy to understand Microsoft documentation to just set up, and then you have to explore by yourself, how you can do, and how you can write your own logics and queries and things like that, right? With that said, I think I would open up for any questions.
Hey Samik, yeah. We have one question from Anna. I would bring
Okay.
it up. In
All
my
right.
environment, I
So
have many web apps that consume OpenAI GPT model as well as
yeah,
cognitive search service. How can I
yeah.
monitor the consumption of cognitive search resource on a web app level?
All right.
Yep.
So that's really a great question. And for that, I would just try to bring up the logs. I try to demonstrate, see if I can still bring it up. So as you say, right? For example, two things. Number one, once you have your OpenAI instance, or even your cognitive services instance, look at by monitor what are the metrics as you get. Those are fundamental matrices which is available by default. If that is, obviously that will not be sufficient in your case because you're using, as you say, multiple web apps, right? So what you could do is write, enable your diagnostic settings for your OpenAI instance or cognitive services instance, and then filter your KQL query in a way that number one, it goes and filters the resource type as cognitive services. Number two, it goes and filters the resource group. Number three, it goes and puts a where condition on your OpenAI instance or cognitive services instance name. And in that way, you will be only able to see, though the diagnostic setting logs all, but you can really apply filters to show or see, I would say, what exactly is executed on a particular model on a particular resource. And query, but that would be the twofold approach. First, look at the matrices, then go and apply the filter in such a way that you're exactly able to target that particular instance which is responsible for your web app. Hope that answers your question.
So there is one more question. Uh, it says like, how does Azure OpenAI's
Right.
monitoring feature contribute to decision making regarding further optimization?
So, as I was talking about it, that's really another great question. So, as I was talking about, for example, that the prompts you're writing, or for example, if you're using from any web app or any other development milliseconds. So, and suddenly you keep on seeing that your expectation was 200 and then it goes somewhere around 400, 500 milliseconds. That gives you a decision point that is that something you really want to go and fine tune your prompt once again. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it, the moment you see that, you'll be able to see the usage of that. Let's say you have developed a chat app itself, or any other development stuff, and then that's in production. You'll be able to see what's the usage data of it, right? And then if you see it's a high usage, right, really, is that supposed to be high usage? And then you can estimate how that usage can be utilized in a better way. Do you need to break your responsibilities, or do you need to go multi-instance of OpenAI to do that? So those are the things which can be helpful. So fundamentally, again, as I say, it might not give you that, this is the decision point you need to take. But if you try to map your business requirements with the metrics as you get out of Azure monitoring, yes, that can direct you to a optimization and making better decisions. Hope that answers. Any other questions?
Final call to ask the questions. Please drop all your questions in the chat section. Yeah, I think we good, Samik. We had only these two questions coming up. Okay.
Okay, there's one
Yep.
more, right? All right. So, do diagnostic settings comes for free? So the answer is no. You so as long as you're using metrics, which is built in, and that's kind of free of cost, but diagnostic sorting, the moment you enable diagnostics login, it goes into, and it depends on where exactly you are streaming it. If you're streaming it to diagnostics logs to event hub or log analytics or storage account, accordingly that particular resource costing will be applied. So for example, if you're ingesting into log analytics, so log analytics has a per gigabyte cost per, and it keeps the log for 31 days. Event have a different mechanism, that what is the frequency or how many count you're ingesting. That's how it's calculated. Same goes for storage account. Storage account is, the costing of storage account is on volume. So yes, it costs, and it also depends on where exactly you are pushing the logs, right?
Any more questions? I guess no. I think we good. Samik, let's call for a wrap.
Sure.
Thank you everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And sorry for a little technical glitch that we had. We had a little streaming issue. We had to join back Samik there. Sorry for that. And hope you all have a great evening and great day ahead. Thank you all so much. Thank you once again for joining us today. And please do drop in to our Reactor LinkedIn group, which will help you to know more about the events that are lined up. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Samik. Thanks a lot for
Thank
uh,
you,
doing this
everyone.
today. Yep.
Thank you, everyone. Hey,
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
all right.